Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's group chat. As always, I'm Carol, your Democracy Operations and Community Officer.
And I'm Yasmin, your Welfare and International Officer.
Fantastic. So term 3 kicks off on Monday. So we're restarting these weekly shows to keep you up to date on everything that's happening at the Students' Union and at UCL. Hopefully you've had a bit of a break over the last few weeks, caught up on some sleep, I know I definitely have, and that you're ready for the term ahead. And as we've been away for a few weeks, having our own rest, on today's show, we'll give you an update on some of the things you may have missed and share some highlights to look forward to next week. And in a break with tradition, we're going to be welcoming our very first external guest from outside UCL, and that being David, LSE Student Union's General Secretary, to talk about Students United Against Fees, or SUAF for short, and the day of action that's coming up on the 29th of April. As always, a massive thank you to Film Society and especially Diego for producing this show. Now over to Yasmin for the weekly update.
So let's start with what you need to know this week. Over the break, we were all waiting to hear the government's decision on the return to campus. And last week they announced that in-person teaching will only resume from May 17th at the earliest. We've shared information about this in our newsletter and we'll be talking about what this means for fee refunds later in the show. We've reopened some of our spaces. Outdoor sport is back and outdoor society activity within the rule of 6 is starting back up again. And although the government's announcement has changed some things, we're still able to reopen our gym, the Institute Bar Terrace, our shop, and get some in-person club and society stuff back up and running. The Institute Bar Terrace is a great treat this time of year. It's a beautiful space and it's perfect for golden hour. In support of Testicular Cancer Awareness Month this April, a member of UCL Racks Club is raising money for the Oddballs Foundation. The challenge is to run 8 kilometers, donate £8, and nominate a few of your friends to do the same. Join in. We've put this information in our newsletter too. It's award season and you've been nominating clubs, societies, volunteers and reps in the hundreds. This year has been so difficult for so many reasons, but there are still thousands of students out there who have given their time, energy and effort to make this year better for others. We're going to be celebrating them all towards the end of term, but first we need you to tell us who they are. So if you've got a great committee in your club and want to put them forward for an award, do it. If you've been inspired by someone you know who's been volunteering this year, shout about it. We've shared links in the email yesterday, but a final reminder, Arts and Societies award nominations close this Sunday just before midnight. Another thing to celebrate this month is Ramadan, so Ramadan Mubarak to all our Muslim members. So the holy month started on April 13th, and our Islamic Society have put together a really useful guide to help you make the most of this month. Check it out on their Instagram for daily tips and support with your fast. And finally, if you've got an exam in the next few days, good luck. You've made it this far through this incredibly tough year, and we know you'll smash it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Yasmin. And now we're going to be talking about this week's priority. And as we discussed in the introduction, it's all about tuition fee refunds and Students United Against Fees. So we're going to bring in David from LSE Students' Union onto the call. Hi, David. How are you?
Hello, Carol, Yasmin. Fantastic to be with you. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you guys?
Surviving. So, David, just want to quickly introduce yourself to everyone watching.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm David Gordon. I'm the General Secretary or President of LSE Students' Union. I've been working with a few unions across the country, including Students' Union UCL, on the Students United Against Fees anti-tuition fee campaign, particularly demanding compensation for students affected by the pandemic on their fees.
Brilliant. So, yeah, students have been sidelined time and time again by, particular decisions of this government. And, few weeks ago, as we said, as Yasmin said in the update section a little bit earlier, classrooms, seminar rooms, and lecture theatres have all been open in further education colleges since the 8th of March. So why do university students, well, most university students, have to wait until the 17th? Oh, doesn't make any sense. So, Yasmin, do you have any kind of thoughts about kind of what students are feeling at this time of year, particularly with how rough this year has been for them?
Yeah, I think, well, moving away from just what this year is, this time is very stressful anyway. It's time that people have dissertation deadlines, they've got exams coming up, and I think, kind of added with everything that's gone on this year, it's very tough, and students just want to be able to return to some sort of, normal life that they had. And so I think waiting until the 17th of May to reopen universities I don't know, to be honest. But yeah, I think students just want to get back to campus, want to get back to their normal.
Kind of quickly explain what Students United Against Fees is. I mean, I know you did that a little bit earlier, but maybe kind of talk about kind of what we're done and what we're going to be doing, and then kind of potentially how kind of what Yasmin just said about how frustrating it is to be a student, particularly at this time of year when deadlines and exams are coming up, and kind of how that feeds into our work as well.
Yeah, amazing. I really liked what Yasmin said. I think students do just want to get back to it. They'd like to be students. They'd like to be having fun, but also studying hard for exams. And the pandemic has made that especially difficult. And in particular, the government's handling of the pandemic has made it quite difficult for students to be recognised and heard in government policy affecting our lives. So to talk about the journey of the campaign, it all started because LSE students demanded compensation on their fees, and as their general secretary, I took it on myself with the union to work with other unions on a national campaign around this. So here we are, a couple of months later. We're working towards the day of action on the 29th of April, that's Thursday next week, that all students can get involved in. We want you to tweet your MPs, sign a complaint letter to Boris Johnson. The current complaint processes that exist, we feel, serve universities and the regulators. They don't serve students, and they certainly aren't going to be the way that most students can get justice. So we're trying a slightly different approach away from petitions to Parliament to target Boris Johnson directly and hopefully get loads of students supporting that as an action. So that's one of the things we'll be doing, as well as tweeting your MPs and sharing your anger. This is something students have not been heard. Students have been forgotten throughout the pandemic. That's all the way from government decision making through to the day-to-day experiences and of the university space as well. And we want to make sure there's a space that students can be heard. So we hope that everyone will join us on the 29th of April to share their anger, make sure your stories can be heard. And just in terms of what we've been doing aside from that, working with loads of unions across the country. We had a call with about 40 unions on it earlier in the week, which was fantastic. Supplementing all of the action on the day itself. We're also hoping people will be submitting some memes about the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Carol loves to remind us he didn't pay anything for his education, yet we're footing the bill for the sector and for the government's failed handling of a pandemic that has really affected us. And we don't believe students should be covering that cost.
Brilliant. Yeah, when Boris went to Oxford in the early 80s, he actually got a scholarship. So he didn't pay. He actually got paid to go to university, and students paying more than £9,000 this year for a year of this, which could have been definitely a lot bigger than that, which is fantastic. So David, do you want to tell us what it's been like at LSE this year, and kind of you said that this campaign started at LSE, so do you want to quickly talk about kind of what particular circumstances led to the formation of Students United Against Fees?
Yeah, I think as with most unions around the country, recognised this year was going to be a year about reacting to the emerging issues, and in particular how students were feeling as they faced the pandemic and the effects of it. I think what's particular about LSE, we've got an incredibly high number of international students and also postgraduate students. So in terms of students who aren't paying by the typical student finance route, we've got absolutely loads of them. So the feeling of injustice, I think, is felt a little bit harder for those students paying directly. Like I said, loads of our students are paying directly at LSE. That injustice exists for everyone, but in terms of feeling the burden on your own pocket as opposed to through student finance, it's those students, which has led us to this position where, students were getting along okay in the autumn term in 2020. It still wasn't great. Then the lockdown came in November in the UK. And then by the time it kicked in January, the third lockdown, I think people had had enough. And we knew, we were talking to our students, that this is what they wanted: some justice on their fees. They're paying extremely high prices for an in-person on-campus experience, which might not have been promised, but was definitely a fair expectation for them when they arrived at UK university. And it isn't something they've received. So that's kind of the origin of the campaign. What it was like at LSE, educators at LSE have been doing a fantastic job, but that's not to say students are getting the full benefit of an experience that they're paying for, and we believe they should be compensated for that.
Absolutely. So very similar to what was happening at UCL. So a lot of the SABs were involved in kind of discussions in October, November, early December about kind of exciting plans for term 2, kind of, an increase in face-to-face sessions for all students. And yet there was that kind of optimism that 2021 would be better, which, come New Year's Day, didn't happen. I was in a UCL SMT meeting and we were discussing what another lockdown for UCL students would look like in January, and lo and behold, it happened. So I do think that it's great to hear that the situation is very similar across the country, and I think that actually binds us together. And there is such a strength in numbers and in everyone kind of using the 29th of April, so next Thursday, to all speak and all talk about their experiences this year and all of the reasons why this year hasn't been worth it. And it's definitely not at the fault of, as you said, the educators, the academics, those who are working kind of overtime to really deliver education remotely this year. So David, after the 29th of April, what's next for Students United Against Fees?
That's a fantastic question. Okay, assuming pessimistically that the day of action doesn't result in compensation being handed out by government to students all at once, the fight will continue. And what we're hoping to do is show a more sophisticated side of the student movement. We've been working with the advisory firm London Economics, note not LSE, but they're a different entity, which is a mistake I made myself. But we've worked with them to do some financial modelling of what fee compensation could look like. And there shouldn't be any good reasons for government not to engage with us. And more than anything, we hope that this campaign, and more importantly, students, get platformed in the process. Students have not been listened to routinely throughout the pandemic. And so while we're coming in with more sophistication, we hope that is the moment we can be taken seriously as individuals and as a movement, understanding that we've been really harshly affected as a collection of people.
Absolutely. So definitely kind of looking to, next Thursday is going to be about all the reasons why students deserve financial compensation. And then after the 29th, it's then about, okay, well, you've heard us, you've now listened to us. Now this is what we want you to do. And we actually have some really exciting solutions, and hopefully, we will be sharing them with all students when we publish them. But yeah, I've seen some of the draft results, and they're very exciting. And oh God, what was my next question? I had it in my brain. This sometimes happens to me. Okay, well, it's disappeared. So, David, do you want to kind of quickly explain why we're targeting the government rather than kind of local, a more local level with individual universities?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. I realised and learned really quickly when I reached out to other SUs nationally that there are some really strong views about how we should proceed as a campaign. If we target universities individually, if we succeed in that, and at a local level, universities compensate their students, perhaps universities like UCL or LSE might be okay. They might be able to weather that storm. But universities across the country simply would go bankrupt. And that wasn't something, assuming we might be successful in the campaign, that wasn't something we wanted on our consciences. We don't want, as a student movement, to bankrupt the sector. We'd much rather empower the sector and get justice for ourselves on fees, which is why we've taken the approach of targeting government. In particular, because we believe the government could have done better in sustaining an environment in which students were able to study on campus and have something of an in-person experience. The fact that students aren't allowed back into the classroom for such a long time until May is evidence of the fact that the government has missed out on students, which is why we think there's a really strong case for government to be the actor coming in here to facilitate fee compensation, where they have failed to facilitate a quality education. That's something we think was the government's responsibility, and has made it really hard for universities to provide.
I completely agree, and I think it's so frustrating that currently I could get a tattoo or I could get another piercing, but I can't have a face-to-face seminar. Like that was an active decision made by this government. It baffles me absolutely, and you definitely pay. I mean, depending on how big it is, you don't pay £9,000 for a tattoo, so definitely not. And so kind of prior to Easter, a few members of the UCL SAB team went to see and meet with Michelle Donnellan to talk about all the issues affecting students, and we definitely mentioned tuition fee refunds, but of course we got the copy paste response like all other times we tried to contact her about that. But Yasmin, do you want to quickly summarize kind of the report that we presented to her about what it's like to be a UCL student studying this year remotely?
Yeah, so we did this research to kind of find out how students are feeling this year. And what we saw was that there is a severe crisis in student mental health. And I think there's always been a mental health crisis amongst students, but this year I think it's just been unreal. So I think half of our students were suggesting that their mental health is worse than before the pandemic. So if you're ready, I'm assuming that students already have bad mental health. So to have even worse mental health is, it's just kind of unbelievable. And then kind of looking at like student retention, there was significant concerns regarding that. So 1 in 4 students were seriously considering dropping out during this academic year, or maybe even interrupting their studies because of their circumstances and everything that's going on. I think a really important one that we need to look at is our sense of community and belonging. So 85% of students said that they didn't feel that they were having a good social experience because of the pandemic, and that the sense of community and belonging to a university or a group of people, it just wasn't there. And I think that's one of the really big things that a lot of students are kind of dealing with, and I think even us, kind of not being able to be around people, you just don't feel like you're in a community. And 60% of students also said that they've been lonely every day or every week. So kind of looking at these statistics, you should be shocked. Anyone should be shocked at these, and it just goes to show that we are being neglected, and things need to be done, and things need to be changed. And yeah, it's quite sad to see these statistics. But yeah, kind of like bringing it back to quality of teaching. I think there was at the beginning of the year a lot of concerns about the quality of teaching online, and kind of looking at this report that we've done, almost 4 in 5 students felt that COVID had a negative impact on their university experience. People don't feel like they're getting their value for money. There's been frustration with teaching and learning, and 2 in 5 students feel that the lack of face-to-face contact is having a negative impact on their studies. So yeah, I think that's kind of the main takeaways from that report. I think there's a lot more statistics and things that we can learn from this. But yeah, that's my summary.
Absolutely, and for anybody who wants to read it, it's on our Students' Union website. I'm sure there were links to it in a previous newsletter, and also if you go onto like the news tab on the website, it's going to be one of the kind of latest stories that we have on there. And something that really resonates with me is just that over half of UCL students regularly feel lonely, and it's that kind of frustrating statistic which could easily have been mitigated if university students and the university student experience was a priority for this government, with kind of making decisions pairing higher education with further education. And so when further education colleges went back on the 8th of March, why couldn't the majority of students go back at that same time as well? So David, just before we kind of wrap this section up, do you want to quickly say how students can get involved in the campaign Students United Against Fees, and how they can get involved with the 29th as well?
So the absolute best thing you can do right now is follow us on Twitter and Instagram. So our Instagram is at SUAF21, and then our Twitter, slightly bizarrely, because the name was already taken, is at SUAF211. So yeah, follow us on there. Keep in touch. The best thing you can do is make sure you're telling your story and getting your friends to tell your story. Sign the letter on the day of action when it comes. Get involved with the campaign, and we're going to be having a kind of open Zoom call, campaign strategizing during the day, that anyone is welcome to pop into. Details will be on our Instagram and Twitter for you to join in with. And hopefully you can join us to have some fun, stick it to the government, tell them that they're not doing a good enough job representing us as students, and fight for the fee compensation that you really sorely deserve.
Brilliant. I'm looking forward to so many memes. But obviously please be respectful when all of you, make your Boris memes. We don't want to be perpetuating any harmful stereotypes, or, being discriminatory against any groups. So, please be respectful when you're making those memes. I'm definitely going to try my hand at it. So we'll see what I come up with. And for all UCL students listening, watching us, we'll be talking about it a lot as a Students' Union over the next week. So just keep an eye on your emails and on our social medias, and we'll have a lot more information next week. So a massive thank you for joining us, David. Do you have any last things to say?
No, just thanks so much for having me on. Students' Union UCL have been such an important player in getting this campaign off the ground, so massively appreciate it, and look forward to the support from yourselves and all of the students getting involved in our day of action next week on Thursday.
Brilliant. Again, massive thank you for joining us, David. I'll see you next week at remotely on the day of action. And yeah, so that wraps up this long discussion on the priority of the week. So Yasmin, what's happening next week?
Well, there's a lot going on next week. Everything is listed on our What's On calendar, so head there for links, tickets, and more information. But here are some highlights. So first, we've got some wellbeing events. So while a lot of us might be stressed with exams and dissertations, we just wanted to remind you to take a breather, get some rest, and take part in some of our wellbeing events. So it might help you feel better and combat those mental blocks. We've got loads of wellbeing events to help you out, including sessions on managing anxiety and personal development. And like I said, you can find all of these on our website. I think just search up wellbeing events and it will come up. The second thing is our Step Up workshop and kind of coping with the pandemic. So this event is run by students, and during this workshop, you'll be exploring and processing this past year and all the anxieties and uncertainties that came along with it. And there'll be a discussion on what we think the future will hold. There'll also be a discussion on finding new strategies to help us stay in this moment. So this event is on Tuesday, and have a look out for it on our What's On calendar. Next, we've got a postgraduate project active run in the park. So I will admit I'm one of these people that are struggling to find the motivation to go out for a run or do a bit of exercise. But what if we told you that you could run in a group with other postgrads? So as part of Postgraduate Project Active, we're running a group park run from Bloomsbury to Regent's Park. And you can run at your own pace, and there's no previous running experience needed. This will be on every Tuesday, so if you're a postgrad student, be sure to get involved in those. Next up, we've got UCL Jazz Society, who are running an online show on the history of jazz, known as the Jazz Age. So this will be with pieces from different jazz periods performed by the Jazz Society. This will be on Saturday, and it will be live streamed. And finally, we've got photo sock shoots in Covent Garden. So photo sock will be wandering around the beautiful Covent Garden for these perfect shots. Join them in person on Sunday, and as this is an in-person event, you will need full membership for it, so make sure you get that on the website. Those are my highlights, and make sure you look out for Ilyas's email on Monday with lots more events and things to get involved with this week.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Yasmin. It's fantastic to see kind of also like hear that there are in-person events happening now. So it's so heartening, and also like I'm really looking forward to watching the Jazz Society show. I've pretty much watched all of them in ones that I've been available to go to anyway for the last several years, and they're always fantastic. They always put on incredible shows. I mean, in person in the Bloomsbury Theatre, I used to come out humming whichever latest jazz standard they got in my head. And yeah, they're just an incredible group of people, and I highly, highly, highly encourage people to give them a watch on Saturday. So we're just wrapping up on the first group chat back for term 3. Hopefully this was insightful for some of you. If you have any questions about anything we discussed during the Students United Against Fees section, please feel free to email me at doc, so doc.officer@ucl.ac.uk. As kind of David said, we're very heavily involved, and I have been involved in the planning for the 29th digital protest or digital day of action. And so yeah, look forward to talking with some of you if you have any questions. Have a wonderful end of the week, a lovely weekend. See you next time. And yeah, stay healthy.